It's the Cinnamon. It is the 37th iteration, officially, of this year's show.
Officially. Did we get a certificate?
No, not at all. Well, by officially, I meant like we also did like the little mini Oscar episodes as well. So those kind of muck up the count a little bit, but officially in the main continuity of the Cinnamon.
Those are the main continuity. There's a timeline in which those are special episodes. Those are offshoots. Those are the crossovers. Those are
the annuals.
The annuals, exactly. So
someone told me. I feel like I can say this because they admitted they never listened to anything on my show. Someone told me that Paprika, they didn't know where to start or what to listen to because there's too many shows and it's too convoluted. And I was like, oh my God, I've become Marvel in DC. For any new listener, they're going to be that dude or that lady that's just aimlessly wandering in the comic book shop, not knowing where to start and what to pick up. And I feel proud of that.
Well, and you, A, should feel proud of that, but B, at that point, then you need to just come up with a general pull list, just like a comic book store would. You'd be like, okay, you got to start with episode 3 of Refied Scenes. You got to start with episode 5 of Choose Our Own Adventure. That's where they really hit their stride. You got to start with episode 10 of The Cinnamon. That shit is amazing. It's hard to find, but it's so good if you can track that down. It's a little rarity.
Come on.
You need a pull list.
Came a long way for a great joke right there.
But you do.
Right.
I get that because you have been doing this for a really long time, and so you have a catalog.
Far too long.
I mean, we've only done 37 of these, so I mean, how long could you really have been doing this? Y'all should see the look he just gave me. Times like these, I wish that we posted the video, but at the same time, I haven't showered yet, so I'm really glad we're not.
Yes, that's on my agenda for when we get done with this.
For me to shower? I'm so confused. Why do you have that on your agenda?
Look, I like to keep a hold of all my peoples just to make sure you're safe out there. Make sure the Rona doesn't get y'all too lazy out there in your respective abodes.
True. That's true. That's that whole got to keep us all so fresh, so clean. So you've got us on a schedule.
That's what I'm here for, man. Here, look out for general well-being of Paprikas. Anyways, let's get right into it, sir. What you been watching lately?
I have been watching quite a bit of stuff. I've been trying to make up for the fact that my semester starts. I've only got one class that I'm teaching, but my semester starts very soon after this recording. And you'd think one class would be a lot easier, but it's an online class. And the process for online classes at the institution I teach at has so many extra things that it needs that it's way more work. So
teaches at Yale, by the way.
I mean, it's the Yale of Central Piedmont Community College, Levine campus, but I'm not actually going to be on campus. So what I thought I'd do is just narrow it down to a few films I've seen recently that I would definitely recommend. And the first one is actually an oldie that I just caught up with, and it's the director's cut of Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes. That's a movie I've only seen once a long time ago that I would not mind revisiting. I remember I'm not a huge dude into that type of genre, but that's when I was like,
musicals or horror?
Musicals.
Okay.
But it stands out for me, man. I really enjoyed it when I watched it. Have you already seen the director's cut, or is your first time watching the director's cut version?
First time watching the director's cut. I've been hearing about it for, I forget what iteration of the home release they included. It was probably a Blu-ray release where they included the director's cut. I'd never checked it out. I still have the DVD that I bought eons ago. And after watching, I think the last episode we talked about the documentary Howard, about Howard Ashman, and he's the writer for it. Mm-hmm. So this was his play originally that then Frank Oz directed. And I've seen the stage play. Crystal took me to that years ago when it came to Charlotte. So I was aware of the big difference between the Broadway show or the theatrical production and the original movie. And yet I was entirely creeped the hell out watching the director's cut. It is deeply unsettling, in sort of the same way that the end of Ghostbusters 1 always creeped me out as a kid, with Slimer coming at the screen.
Ah,
They
yes.
they do something like that with the director's cut, and it is awesome. It's the kind of thing where I wish I'd seen it in a theater, because it does that Gremlins 2 thing where the movie becomes part of what you're watching.
Yeah.
And yeah, Audrey 2 busts through the screen to get you. And I imagine seeing that in the theater, because you weren't expecting it, would be so much fun. But it's dark and it's creepy and it's a little shop of horrors. So I'd highly recommend checking that. It's on HBO Max if you've got access.
Ah.
Yeah, but here's the trick for it. You find Little Shop, and then underneath it, when you click on Little Shop, it says extras. The one extra is the director's cut.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and make sure if you end up watching it and you have to stop it for some reason, just so you know, if you go back and try to start back where you were, it starts over from the beginning. I think they treat it as an actual extra instead of a film.
Yeah.
So definitely want to recommend that. Have you seen Train to Busan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you seen Psychokinesis?
No.
I just watched that last night. It's from the same director, Yan Sang-ho. And it's the description, if you will, is an ordinary guy suddenly finds he has superpowers he can use to help his spirited daughter and the people around them, but he also runs into trouble in the process. It's basically about a dude that leaves his daughter when she's 10, and he's sort of a really shitty guy stealing coffee and toilet paper from the security gig he has that he's always late to. But he ends up getting telekinesis powers and tries to monetize it, but his daughter, he finds out, is fighting with a bunch of people to keep their businesses that are about to be demolished unlawfully. It's marketed as a comedy on Netflix. It is funny, but not a comedy. And it's got some really interesting elements. It's a different version of a superhero story, and it really only kicks into high gear, I would say, in the last 30 minutes or so. But if you like Train to Busan, definitely check this out. Again, it's on Netflix. Apparently, it released on Netflix the same day as Infinity War. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people back then did not pay attention to it.
That is correct.
Only two more things that I definitely want to recommend. One is a documentary that's coming out by this point when this drops. I think will already be available on Apple TV Plus. A documentary called Boys State. Its co-directors are Jesse Moss and Amanda McBain, which, by the way, is the best last name ever.
McBain? Yeah, that's a pretty dope last name.
It is a great last name. But
it sounds like a villain's last name.
It is. And I don't remember my Simpsons well, but I think that's the name of, like, the dude with the flamethrowers.
Scorpio?
Or maybe I'm thinking of... oh, that's right. It's the Schwarzenegger ripoff, isn't it?
Yes, I think you're right.
There we go, McBain. So Amanda McBain, awesome. But these co-directors, they follow a one-week event sponsored by the American Legion called Boys State. And if I understand my research correctly, it takes place across the country for 1 week. And there is a girl version, Girls State, but they only follow the boys. This happened in 2018, and for 1 week, I think it's 1,100 kids get together and they form their own cities, their own governments, and they vie for political position. Some elected, some not. And they're split into two parties, Federalist and Nationalist. And the big thing is to become voted governor by both parties. So you oversee everybody. And you wouldn't think that it would be all that particularly interesting. I was on the edge of my seat. It is highly charged, incredibly exciting, and in some ways a real examination of politics in general. It is phenomenal. It's one of the best documentaries I've seen this year. That's coming to Apple TV. And then last but not least, we'll call it a young adult supernatural romance called Endless, directed by Scott Speer. He did one of the Step It Up movies. Revolution, I think. Mm-hmm. But it's got cast, and it's one of the reasons why I highly recommend it, is Alexandra Shipp. She was in Tragedy Girls, Love, Simon. She played Storm in the last two X-Men movies.
Yeah, you could have left that credit off.
Probably. But I can't remember the other big one that I really liked her in. But she's in this along with Nicholas Hamilton, who folks will certainly know from It Chapter 1. He played the big bully. He did something else that at the moment I can't remember, but people certainly know that there. I hate to describe it this way. It's basically young adult without the thriller aspect. But its exploration of grief is so spot on, and Ship's performance is so great that if you're looking for something sort of low stakes, if you will, to watch when it hits VOD on the 14th, recommend it.
Boom.
That's where we at. Those are the big things I'm going to recommend. Also, if you're feeling like getting into your gaming thing, Max Reload and the Nether Blasters. I'm not even going to describe that one other than to say, if you're a big gamer, check that out.
Well, there you go, man. Yeah. There you go.
What about you?
Speaking of exploration of grief, have you seen She Dies Tomorrow?
No.
Yeah, I do believe that is out now.
Yeah, it hits drive-ins on the 31st.
Yeah,
that's and right. Then VOD.
VOD. I watched that a little bit ago. Amy Seimetz, still not sure how to pronounce her last name correctly. Directed that, wrote it as well. Yeah, and produced it. So she was out there triple threatening it. And still found no way to actually be in the movie. That makes no sense to me. Best
Sometimes
if I'm writing, directing, and producing, man, I'm slipping in there somewhere. But about a woman's dead belief that she is going to die tomorrow, and you cannot shake this immutable fact from her mind that she's going to die tomorrow. And somehow that ends up being what's the word I'm looking for? Contagious. Prophecy? No.
Oh, it's contagious.
Yes. So people that she comes in contact with then also going to believe that they are going to die tomorrow. This could go in one way. It does not go that way. It really is.
So she doesn't die tomorrow? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, you never see it. It's also a strange exploration of not an exploration of grief, but of just accepting fate and the different ways these different people deal with this kind of stuff. You have one person, or your main person, that's just like, is what it is. I die tomorrow. And then you have somebody else that handles it in a completely different way. And then someone else, that couple that kind of handle it together in their own way. And you kind of get a glimpse into their relationship and how that all plays out. And then it's one of those movies where for 84-minute runtime, you don't really go a whole lot of places. It doesn't really take you anywhere. It just kind of takes you through a night and day of people who think that they are going to die when that next day comes. It's an interesting watch, but ultimately it's okay. Although I will say that, judging by the reactions on Twitter, myself and old Winstead over there are in the
shout out to Winstead Reviews.
Shout out to Winstead Reviews, man. We're in the outlier. Wow, we thought it was okay, and everybody else is like, "Oh my god, this movie is amazing." So,
I think Hunter Heilman also felt the same way. As you two.
Yeah.
As you two. I think he, if I remember correctly, and I want to put words in his mouth because
it wouldn't fit.
Remember, I don't want to offend him, but I think he thought that it had some pretty good stuff, but it was not a waste of time. I think he fell in line with the two of you, where it's got some interesting stuff, but it wasn't, oh my god, amazing.
They do some good stuff visually, I'll say that much. Like, they put the camera in some really weird places. They make some pretty good uses of neon throughout that movie as well. Actually, I think this is a neon release too. But yeah, go ahead and check out.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Which is just coincidental.
Yeah, totally coincidental.
No, I mean the neon use. It's not like you have to use neon in a neon film.
I feel like that should be a standing thing. Like, if you want us to produce and distribute your movie, you're going to have to have at least one scene that's just absolutely absurd with neon in there somewhere.
No wonder Paul Springs went to Hulu. Not a single bit of neon. Not a single bit of neon.
You hate to see it. And I also watched Invisible Man. I finally got around to watching that bit of business.
The new one, right?
Yes. Not the old school joints, not the old Universal shit. Yeah, good movie, man. A damn good movie. I don't give it the high praise that everyone else is giving, but it is a good, taut, tense, like edge of your seat joint, man. This is Elizabeth Moss's wheelhouse. It kind
Becoming
of
it.
seems like, yeah, it's becoming it, man. And I don't want her to get pigeonholed into just these bleak, dour, because you already get that in Handmaid's Tale. You get that in this. I mean, Shirley certainly isn't exciting and amazing. It's also in that same vein. I'd like to see her branch. Well, we got a little smidge of that in Us, and I think she's a great character in that movie. But yeah, Elizabeth Moss is quickly becoming one of my favorite actresses, man, and she is on full display in this movie, directed by Lee Whannell. And he knows how to direct some people, man. That movie is there's no fat, not a whole lot of fat on that movie.
Mm-mm.
It moves great, it's quick. They do a great job of just putting all those pieces in place, where she does seem crazy from the outsider's perspective. Like, you're really gonna try to peddle this story that there's an invisible man that's out there doing all this crazy shit? Any one of us would be like that. But I like seeing her in her steadfastness. I feel like this is what's going on. And just
there's a moment in that movie where if I'd been in the theater, I would have flipped my shit, and I would have loved to have seen the rest of the theater react that way. There's a death scene which really sets up the everybody else to think that she's crazy. And that moment, I mean, the movie's been out for a long time. VOD hit theaters on home release.
Like you can go ahead and just talk about it.
When the sister dies right in front of her.
Yo!
Holy shit!
Yeah.
I lost my mind on the couch.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's that kind of movie now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's man. I need to check out more Lee Whannell and see what this guy's up to, man.
Have you seen Upgrade?
Yes, you know what? Yes, I think those are his only. No, he's in Insidious too. That's right. Mm-hmm. Upgrade
and Aquaman, if you know where to look.
What?
He's the pilot in Aquaman when they're flying the plane to get wherever, and Mira and Arthur jump out of the plane.
Oh,
and Arthur's like, redheads. Yeah, Lee's flying the plane.
Oh, okay, right on.
Not directing.
Upgrade, the better Venom than Venom. So go ahead and check that out if you ever get a chance. I really dug that flick too. You know what, man? This Lee Whannell's going places.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Serious question. When you watched Invisible Man, did you have access to the special features at all?
No. If I remember correctly, I watched it on Vudu is where I rented it from.
Okay. That to me is one of the downsides of either digital streaming or renting digital, is that you typically don't have access to those.
That's I was going to sidebar into that a couple of minutes ago when you were talking about Little Shop of Horrors, but I decided not to.
We can go there. It's our show. We do as we please.
We can when we have a better runtime.
Well, there's also that. It could be an entire conversation. Who knows? Future show.
And that's exactly why I decided not to. I was like, you can say that for a special features episode of Cinnamon.
Well, I will then keep this brief and say only this. There's a wonderful bonus featurette on the home release that I believe will also be included with the digital home release, where you actually get to see how they shot some of the sequences. For example, the sequence where Moss's character gets attacked in the kitchen at her friend's home, they used a camera that was on a timer. So they had to choreograph it like a dance, where they had to know at which point they had to be in which place, but also act while keeping aware of where the camera was. So it wasn't someone moving the camera. The camera was literally pre-programmed. And learning about that and watching it happen is phenomenal, and just sort of elevates what you see on camera. It just makes it that more complicated and impressive.
Love seeing how movies are engineered. Anyways, let's get into, are you ready to get into the topic here, sir?
I am. School days.
Yes, this is one of your ideas, man. I like this joint. This is a good idea.
This was hard and also a lot of fun, because there's so many movies. And for those of you listening, the idea was to explore and identify films that are either centered on or take place around a school. So it could be something as obvious as PCU or Jawbreakers, Heathers, right? Could be something like Carrie, which has a seminal moment in particular. The Faculty, Varsity Blues, Clueless, Top Gun. People tend to forget it's a flight school.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Top Gun is a flight school. Navy.
We've got Summer School, the Harry Potter series, Animal House, a variety of Spider-Man movies. Almost all of them either take place in or on campus at high school. Here Comes the Boom, Crystal reminded me, is a school movie because he's trying to raise money for his school. Legally Blonde, Fame, Sky High, Monster University, Big Hero 6, Ender's Game, Idle Hands, not another teen movie. I couldn't believe she brought up not another teen movie while we were doing that, but, you know, that counts, which basically covers anything that would have fall underneath the Pretty in Pink Weird Science Breakfast Club variety.
And
there's so many movies. So many.
We might as well just go ahead and kick this off. My first one is not another teen movie.
Why? Is it because you like Chris Evans?
Hey, first of all, you get a look at pre-cap. Chris Evans doing what Chris Evans does smug very well. We've seen it in Knives Out. You get a good bit of it at the beginning of his character before he starts to soften up here in this movie. Look, as far as what you want to call a new school of parody movies, you know, nothing stopping Scary Movie, but not another teen movie gives it a run for its money. I fucking love this movie. It's so goofy and ridiculous in the way what they choose to lampoon on from those old John Hughes types movies. And how they kind of take it and flip it and twist it, and some are just direct homages. It's half parody, half love letter, I think, to that genre of whatever you want to call it, high school romance or something like that. A pretty decent cast in there. Like I said, you got Evans before Evans became a thing. Jamie Presley's in there. Mia Kirshner, no idea what happened to her in the world. A whole bunch of other people in there as well. Yeah, see, you're trying to figure it out too. I was looking at the cast list earlier, and I was like, don't know what happened to her.
And the girl who was the girl with the glasses is now on Supergirl.
And the girl with the glasses is now on Supergirl. And also, if I hold on a second, let me double check this real quick because I think
if she just didn't wear those jean splattered pants and wear those glasses, she'd be so hot.
It's absolutely ridiculous. This is the whole premise of that is all absolutely ridiculous. Sam Levine, I knew he was in there somewhere. Shout out to Sam Levine. It's
Wolverine.
It's funny. It's you got your little bit of a message, if you want to call it that, in there as well, which, a lot of those movies back in the days kind of tried at that and mostly failed. This one, I think, does a little bit better version. But as far as kicking it off, and we can't not talk about Mr. T as well, popping up in that movie. Great cameos as well. Of course, Molly Ringwald, who was a staple of the very films that they're parodying. Her
great. Appearance was perfect.
Yep, perfect. Just the right amount of time, at the right time, in and out like a robbery. There you go. Boom. That's my first one. Not another teen movie.
Mine can be summed up thusly. You ready?
I'm ready.
My first one is San Dimas Football Rules! Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Of course.
There are aspects of that film. I rewatched both of them about a year or so ago. I got my hands on the Shout Factory Collector's Edition, which is now out of date with Bill and Ted Face the Music hitting VOD in select theaters on August 28th. But I rewatched them, and they're still hilarious and still amazing. There is the homophobia has not aged well at all, but homophobia never ages well. But beyond that, it's still Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is still hilarious. It still works as a comedy where you've just got these two lovable slackers that just can't get their shit together. And when you've got a cast that includes George Carlin, you really can't go wrong. And he is phenomenal as Rufus. And I am delighted to have heard that he will be honored in some way in Face the Music. Because it's hard to imagine a Bill and Ted adventure that doesn't include him. And even Bogus Journey found a way to work him in as wearing the Pam Grier bodysuit. Because if you're going to be inside the body of someone, I guess, be inside Pam Grier. But Keanu
I'd like
Reeves
to try.
but Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter are Bill and Ted. Like, there are some performances where you watch someone and go, they are these people. They're William Shatner will forever be Captain James
J. Hooker.
Tiberius Kirk.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Also that, from what I understand. But they just are these people, and you can't imagine anyone else in those roles, and that's how this feels. And it still works. It is still hilarious. And that ending sequence of the performance, the actual history exam, as an adult, makes no fucking sense. There are so many things that happen that would not actually, they would have shut that shit down. Billy the Kid firing guns? Come on now.
Why not?
Would not happen. Does not make sense. But within the scope of this world, everything that they do makes absolute sense, and it's hyper-realism. And it's still fantastic. And I totally would go to Joan of Arc's aerobics class. Just saying that now.
There you go.
Iggy wiggy. So, number 2, what you got?
Number 2 for me is Dead Poets Society.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
Yes, indeed. Directed by Peter Weir. Man, Peter Weir always put in good work. Another good cast of people, man. Robin Williams in there. Ethan Hawke. The first time I was ever introduced to Ethan Hawke was in this movie. Josh Charles, who will go on to do the most underrated television show possibly of all time.
Sports Night?
Sports Night.
Yes!
Yes, I very much love that joint. And all sorts of other Kurtwood Smith in there as well. Laura Flynn Boyle in this movie. It's a good joint, man. A little known fact for you. Liam Neeson was going to play Robin Williams' role, and I just cannot see him radiating that warmth and presence of character, that weight that Robin Williams brings to this. It would have been a different take. I need to go over to Earth 75 where that movie happened. So I can
we
check
all
that
need to
out.
go to Earth 75. It's probably very different there.
Yes.
Tenet was already in theaters there.
Yeah. Tenet came out 3 years ago on Earth 75.
Or did it? Has it already happened, but just not to us yet?
Oh, yes.
Is it inverted in 70?
In this Earth, it has happened, but not to us.
Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, it's a great movie, just about self-discovery, about trying to find your identity and your way in this world, and acceptance as well, man. Because growing up and identity and discovery is something that happens to you, but the people around you are also affected by it as well. Parents, for example, have to make that choice of whether or not to support you in your new identity and your new discovery. And as we see in this movie, unfortunately, for one circumstance, that does not happen, and it leads to a very tragic ending. You can't suppress who someone is, especially if they're a butterfly that's trying to break free. You got to make sure you give them that room and that space and any available resources to try to break free. Yeah. And just reaching your potential, I think, is the main theme of this movie. Excellently directed, well acted. Of course, you get the "Oh, Captain, my Captain" at the very end. A powerful end scene to a movie, if there was one. Check that out, man, if you haven't. Dead Poet Society.
Yeah, which, excuse me, considering how old that film is, I'm amused that you were okay with spoiling an aspect of The Invisible Man that just came out this year. Dead Poet Society, you're like dancing around aspects. I respect it because, quite frankly, if it's always that weird thing of what films do you spoil to discuss them, and what films do you, as you just did, dance around to preserve the experience for people who haven't seen it. And there's certainly some, what I would deem classic films, Dead Poet Society being one of them, between its cast and its resonance. I wouldn't want to spoil a lot of that for them. Some of these big
ones. That's like some things you don't spoil because it's a great oh shit moment. Like if someone hadn't seen Endgame, you're not going to spoil the fact that Cap picks up the hammer. This is more of an emotional impact spoiler, I think, and you don't want to rob that emotional impact from the movie.
Okay, just because you use that as the example, so for a little while we were getting Funko boxes from Amazon, and they did one for Endgame. So we were like, okay, we at least gotta try and see what's in it. It could be cool. They sent a Funko, it's downstairs, of Cap holding Mjolnir. Well, Connor saw it the other day. He hasn't seen it because we're not going to show that to him just yet. And he goes, "Why is Cap holding Thor's hammer?" Think. Oh, he's just holding on to it for him. He's going to give it back to him. Thor dropped it. Okay, moves on, because that's how a 5-year-old brain works.
Yep.
It's awesome. And because it was on sale, I picked up the Tony Stark Funko where he's snapping.
Mm-hmm.
It glows in the dark. Not very well, but that's fine. But I put it out of Connor's eye line specifically, so he's not like, why is Tony looking all bruised and damaged? Why is he bleeding? No reason, son. Move along. Life is good. Life is good.
Him and Cap got into a little tussle, that's all.
So, my number 2 is another film that, honestly, I couldn't imagine it being anywhere else on this list. Is a film that it was directed by Martha Coolidge, story by Neil Israel, and who also did the script. It is a classic Val Kilmer movie, Real Genius. Mm-hmm. This movie is so absurdly hilarious. For those of you that haven't seen it, it's based on the premise that this kid who is sort of a, for lack of a better term, a nerd, he's socially awkward, Mitch Taylor, played by Gabriel Jarrett, he gets recruited to go to this genius school where some of their things are actually used, practical applications, government, etc. Mm-hmm. And he meets this other supreme genius, Chris Knight, played by Val Kilmer, who is supposedly the smartest person to ever attend this school, and yet he's never graduated. He just keeps doing things that keep him behind and staying there. This is the type of person that keeps a circular roll of liquid nitrogen so that he can just shear some off with this little laser thing and then uses it as quarters to get drinks out. That's how brilliant and cheap this guy is. He pulls off one of the greatest pranks in his hallway where they flood the place with ice so everyone's sliding around, and then of course it heats up and melts away because it's dry ice. He pulls pranks after pranks, even setting up a laser system to lead people to a party with a girls' school across the way. Like it is so ridiculous and is insanely quotable that I actually used it my first RA year of being a resident assistant at UNC Asheville. When he had to create name tags for everybody's rooms, I put on a different Real Genius quote on every one of them. And nice. The one on my door was, you ever have that strange dream where there's you're standing on a pyramid and there's 1,000 naked women screaming and throwing little pickles at you? No, I haven't had that dream. Huh? Why is it only me? Something to that effect. It's just hilarious. And anyway, that's my number 2. What is your big one, sir?
My big one, man. This is one of the first ones that came to me when you suggested this. A little joint from 1989, man. My man Mo Freeman, Lean on Me.
That is an excellent choice.
Yeah, and directed by John G. Avildsen, a director I'm not familiar with, but man, this movie is it's wild business, man. So for those of you who haven't seen it, it's pretty much an inner city school needs to work to get their standardized test score up, lest that school be released to the state or something like that. And they don't want that to happen. So superintendent brings in Crazy Joe, Morgan Freeman, to come in there and clean everybody up, known for his stern, authoritative disciplinary, I guess you could say, or disciplining. He has used some harsh measures to whip everybody into shape. The thing that I find interesting about this movie is the hurdle, the great victory at the end to pass the most basic of things. Yeah. It's not like this big huge. No, just baseline. That's all we want you to do is baseline. Yeah. And for some people, man, low stakes are still big stakes.
Yeah.
And this is an instance where low stakes are big stakes. There is one scene in particular in this movie that I find impactful and incredibly well written and acted, and it's between Morgan Freeman's Crazy Joe and the superintendent that brought him in, played by Robert Guillaume. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name. He just died a couple years ago, I think in 2017, where after Joe's gone a little bit too far in trying to beat this place into shape, he gives him a nice little dressing down and kind of leaves Crazy Joe silent, leaves him speechless, which doesn't really happen in this movie. That's not his character. And then after all that, after giving each other the dagger eyes, the superintendent's like, come on now, let's go get something to eat. and then they dip off. For some reason, that's the scene that gets me right there. That's the scene that I posted when that guy died a couple years ago. Just the journey to become a better version of yourself, because he's also helping students with that as well. Reunites a student with their estranged mother. Yeah. A crack dealer who is begged to be let back into school and Sam's and kind of becomes his right-hand man after a while. So you see the reformation of these kids and the relationships and the impact, not just in school, but out of school as well, that Crazy Joe has on these kids, man. It's much different when it ends than where they were when they began at, man. Lean on me. That dopeness.
My number one is very similar to yours because it is yours. Lean on Me is probably my top tier when it comes to Dead Poet Society. Is very close. Very, very close. But Lean on Me, my mom is a former educator, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I teach community college. My middle brother is a fourth grade teacher, and his wife is a kindergarten teacher. So education sort of runs in the family, sometimes crawls, particularly these days. But watching this film and the depiction of Joe Clark by Morgan Freeman, first of all, that performance is mind-blowing. In the he always seems to have one gear which is really loud, but within that gear, there's resonance and there's layers to it. He is a character that is hard pressed to apologize, but will do it. And when he apologizes, it means something. It's sincere. And at the beginning of the film, before Joe Clark, when we're first introduced to him, he's working at a school. I forget if it's integrated or not, but he's wearing a tie-dye t-shirt and I believe has a bit of a fro, and he's working his students and everybody's engaged. And then something happens and he walks out and he's just gone. And the next time we see him come back to Eastside High, it's just destroyed by the drug dealers and the crime and everything else. And this standardized test, if they don't meet it, yes, it's low stakes, but the school will get defunded. The kids will get sent to other places. And the students that are there, they can't afford that. Like, not just financially, but just mentally and for their progress. So they need to get there. And the way that he pushes people to move beyond themselves and also realize that it's not just the students, but it's the teachers that are part of that process, and that the teachers need to realize that they can't give up. The students need to realize that they can't give up. And Clark gets, as much as he can, the parents involved, and to realize that it's not one thing that fixes the problem, but it's holistic. And so from an education perspective, realizing that holistic thing, it spoke to me, but also the way that he pushed his students. I have always loved, my favorite teachers were the ones that pushed me. The ones that were maybe not so easy on me, the ones that were potentially a little acerbic at times. Those were my favorite teachers. I had a professor at UNC Asheville who, when I went to go talk to him about my final reel that I turned in communications, and I asked if I could pick it up so that I could, keep it because I was about to graduate, his response was to bust out laughing as he told me that it broke after the first time he watched it. And he just started laughing, and I'm standing there in shock, and he's like, what are you going to do? It sucks. And Joe Clark was kind of like that. And he pushed kids. He pushed them, and he wouldn't put up with their bullshit, made them face their own bullshit. And that is particularly why I actually have I tracked down years ago in the early days of the internet a audio file of them singing the East Side High song.
Yeah.
I forget who sang it in the film they used it, but I have that version and I listen to it from time to time. And I always think about the woman at the end of when they've got Joe Clark in jail for doing his job, and she's been on his ass the whole time. She's like, we'll get you a good principal. And that kid that you mentioned who kept Sims, I think Sam's, who kept on the other, and he got into a bad group, and Joe Clark is taking him up on the roof, was like, you're going to ruin your life, fucking jump. Just do it. Just do it now. Kid's in tears. He's like, if you want to live, you need to make some changes. So when she goes, we'll get you a good principal, he's like, we don't want a good principal. We want Mr. Clark. And I'm like, that is awesome. I just something about the structure of the line and just everything else is just so resonant. So I agree with you. Lean on Me. Number one choice.
Boom,
Absolutely.
done and done.
Yeah. Forget Dangerous Minds. That movie wants to be Lean on Me.
I do believe you are correct, sir. Shout out to Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes.
And
Coolio.
Yeah, I would say Lean on Me did not give us Gangsta's Paradise. So,
that is true.
1 point for Dangerous Minds.
But we did get the, I forget the name of the group that did it, but we did get the 80s synth pop Lean on Me, though.
There's that.
Times in our life.
All right, that's enough of that, sir.
We all have pain.
Let me know when you're done. Let me know when you're done.
No?
No.
Fairy side.
Are you done?
No, never. As long as we're doing the show, I will never be done.
Let's get to our challenges. How about that?
Are we going to do an all singing episode? Should we do a musical episode?
You know what?
Daryl, what you watching, Daryl?
That will also not happen.
Man, everybody's doing musical episodes these days. We're not going to get on that train? Okay, fine.
Let's not.
Speaking of schools, our challenges this week were a little different. Yours involved a literal school. Mine involved a nautical school, but a little bit more metaphorical. Would you like to go first?
You go for it, sir.
All right. I was challenged, and this, when I posted online that I was watching it, resulted in quite a few people going,
Yeah.
I was challenged to watch Steven Spielberg's Jaws. Now, considering that I have been a lifelong fan of cinema, many people are shocked that I'd never seen this movie. To those people, I want to say, have you met me? Because Jaws, even now, deeply unsettling with the, we'll call it, use of blood and gore. And the opening sequence, even though I looked at Crystal and tried to diffuse the tension and go, I'm hearing the da-da theme from John Williams, and I'm going, there's no airplane tail. What's happening here? Why are they ripping off Airplane? I knew, and by the way, I knew firmly well that Airplane was ripping off Jaws, but I was trying to diffuse the tension because that opening sequence is still rather uncomfortable. And watching that woman flailing about, she's all by herself in the dark. Later on, when the little kid gets eaten on the raft, it is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just horrible. And it was very uncomfortable to watch at a lot of different points for me, simply because of how I am with certain types of gore and certain types of violence. That being said, I miss this version of Steven Spielberg. I absolutely do. Watching this film, you see exactly why he went on to the type of career that he had, the choice of direction, the cinematography, the performances that he got from his cast. And as I understand it, because while this may be the first time I've watched it, it's not the first time I've studied it. I've watched documentaries and behind-the-scenes things as well. This was apparently a very tumultuous shoot. Very tumultuous.
To say the least.
I mean, people didn't even, as I understand it, the suits didn't even believe in this movie. They were ready to pull the plug a few times because what this young director was doing was costing them quite a bit. And Bruce kept breaking down, as I understand it. But you can see there all of this talent. And then when you go to a movie, and this is certainly my personal opinion that I know a lot of people disagree with, when you go to a film like Ready Player One, you go to a film like War of the Worlds, you don't see that inspiration that Spielberg very clearly has on display in Jaws. There are so many films that he has done, Schindler's List in particular, and quite a few others, where you can see that brilliance on display. Saving Private Ryan, that opening sequence is harrowing in the way that it's shot, as are other aspects of that film. The sniper standoff is quite uncomfortable. But the recent stuff, it just seems like he's done it before, and so he's not quite invested. But you see Jaws, and it is so beautiful and so wonderful. I am glad that I finally watched it, and it is something I look forward to sharing with Connor when he gets to a more appropriate age. But yeah, that is definitely one where all of my concerns of watching it as a kid and being terrified weren't imaginary. That movie is terrifying.
Yeah, and I know another plank for Winstead. He said when we did our, we just released earlier our top monologues episode, our last episode, and we get that monologue from
Quint,
from Robert Shaw, and that's some wild, powerful business right there.
Yeah, that whole sequence in particular, what I loved about it is up until that sequence when they're getting drunk together, they're sort of stepping on each other's toes and fighting with each other for sort of jockeying for power. You've got the scientist played by Richard Dreyfuss, who is trying to do things one way, but it's Quint's boat. And then Chief Brody, he's just like, I hate being on the water. Can you guys please get along?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do here. Please just get your shit together. But that sequence, particularly prior to that story, is them finally bonding and sort of respecting each other. And what in particular I loved, and this to me was the sign of a great writer, great director for that film, is the two men, Quint and Hooper, are sharing these stories about where they've been bitten and with this, that, and the other. Brody just lifts up his shirt, taps a bullet wound, and then puts his shirt back down. The camera barely lingers on it, but in that moment, you get exactly why Brody has left New York and gone to the island.
Yep. Because
something happened to him, and he feels like, and he even says it, you can't do anything there. Here you can actually do something. You can actually maintain this way of life. And that whole sequence with that speech in particular, it's wonderfully shot, an incredible long take, and is so powerful for the emotional work that will happen soon after. It really brings these guys together. So yeah,
a little shout out for trivia for you. They Robert Shaw, they're supposed to be getting drunk together, showed up wasted to set that day.
Yep. Wasn't he drunk for most of the movie?
I wouldn't be surprised. And everything that they tried just that day, they couldn't use. They're like, get the hell out of here. Sober up. So embarrassed he came back and he nailed that monologue in one take that we see in the movie. It's amazing. Yeah. One go. That's a good movie. Jaws is somewhere in the top 10 of the Hunter for 100. Also, you asked me if I've seen Train to Busan. That's somewhere in the 50s or 60s on Hunter for 100 as well.
Couldn't remember.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember 100 films.
Yes, it is. And you challenged me to Hackers.
Yes. Now, to be fair, before you start in, whether good or bad, I gave you a short list of school-related films. You picked that one.
Yes, I did. I did indeed. And I see what you're doing here. Like I told you when I messaged you, you're just trying to get me to see the entire filmography of Johnny Lee Miller for whatever reason. I saw his name.
This is the second one.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. You're slowly but surely peppering them in there. I saw his name in the credits, and I was just immediately like, "Damn it, Douglas!"
Not intentional.
Yeah, I mean, it's Hackers, man.
It is Hackers.
If you take the first movie from January of 1990 and the last movie of December of 1999, those don't even come close to the most 90s movie ever. Because Hackers is the most 90s movie ever. Ever. 1995. You also got Angelina Jolie, obviously, in there. Matthew Lillard in there. Fisher Stevens getting some shine in that movie. And also Lorraine Bracco. Is that her? Okay. Yeah, man. It is a movie of its time, is the best way to put it. And let's we not forget one of the greatest unsung heroes of our generation, Wendell Pierce. That man is an excellent follow on Twitter, by the way. I mean, a film about, hackers doing hacker stuff, and how your
hackers be hacking.
Hackers be hacking, man, and women be shopping. It's a movie about your disparate, your outcasts, the ones that your general society doesn't quite understand. Banding together to, your skills can be used for ills, but sometimes those same skills can be used for good. And that is the case in this instance, man, where we got these people coming together to stop a nice little bit of company embezzlement and theft. And by the way, the Fisher Stevens being our main villain, his plot, his scheme, his plan, pretty fucking legit. If you ask me, it's a pretty legit scheme. And I'm like, you know what? I rock with this guy. I like this Fisher Stevens. It's a fun movie. It's fun to see the interactions between Angelina Jolie and Johnny Lee Miller. Oh, God, Matthew Lillard is terrible in this movie.
What?
He is absolutely...
Shame on you, sir. We do not besmirch serial killer in this house.
Well, luckily, I'm not in your house.
Yeah, but in this house, we don't.
In this house, I was like, God, this guy is garbage. I don't know if it was the...
Little bit of hips, little bit of pelvis. Little bit of hip, little bit of pelvis.
His combination of just absolute corny lines and his horrible delivery of corny lines. And about somewhere 3/4 of the way through the movie, maybe like in the third act somewhere, I was like, what has he done in this movie? I haven't seen him touch a keyboard yet in this film. To be in a group of hackers, he has not hacked anything. So I'm not quite sure what he's doing in this film, but he's there in the background. I guess he's just your comic relief for the film. There's some good stuff going on in there. Johnny Lee Miller's doing his thing.
I wish you guys could see how he described that. Daryl was like, he's doing his thing and flailing about.
He's doing his thing. But yeah, still all sorts of... and Felicity Huffman in there as well. Good, overall... good movie. If you're longing for that time period, which I'm not sure why you would be, but this is one to go back in. This is, I think, one for the nostalgic people. Like, you know what, man, that movie was kind of cool back in the day. Let's put that on and have a couple of Saturday night drinks or Friday night drinks or whatever your case may be. That's what this movie is good for, I think.
I can respect that opinion. Quite seriously, I can respect that opinion, because the hacking in it at the time, when you don't know anything about hacking, looks so cool. But then you learn something about how computers work. And even though they were trying to create fantastic visual elements to make you better understand, you, the audience, better understand what they were doing inside cyberspace, most of it doesn't make sense.
Ooh.
It does not make sense. So really you're watching it, particularly now, if you were to put it on now with, as you went in, no real knowledge of how the film was going to function. It's not great. It's not great, but the soundtrack is amazing.
Oh yeah, that soundtrack is pretty dope.
I think they released 3 volumes. For me, the first volume is the strongest. It's the only one I actually own. It's put me on to Orbital and The Prodigy, which is the best reason to do anything.
There you go.
And that the soundtrack is great. Personally, I find the performance is fun, and it's got some wonderful lines and great characters. And Lawrence Mason as Nikon, it was great for me at the age when I saw it, because Lawrence Mason, he's also in The Crow and plays a completely different character.
Yeah, like 2 years before that, I want to say Crow's like 93, 94, somewhere. And yeah, I kept looking. I was like, where do I know this guy? Where do I know this? Oh, I think he's Tintin?
Yes.
Maybe? Yeah. And he's a whole different character.
Halloween until mañana.
And I also like that he kind of, the first time you see Nikon, he kind of is that character. Where he's like, who the fuck is this guy? What's going on? I got the hood up. You can barely see his face. But then a minute later, that all switches. And, you know, I'm not sure what Matthew Lillard's backstory is, what Sirius Black's backstory is, but apparently he doesn't have a great home life. And he's like, of course you can stay at my place again. And you find out, oh, okay, yeah, he's one of the good ones.
Yeah. No, and that's part of what I liked is that this group was such an oddball. Some of them come from wealthy families, some don't. It's incredibly multicultural. I mean, it's New York, and it actually feels like New York. I mean, the character who plays Freak, Renoli Santiago, you've got and I don't know his background, but you've got black, white, could be Puerto Rican, I'm not sure, could be Dominican.
You got the Asian guys in there hacking, the Japanese guys.
Exactly. You've got this sort of international community that is part of this. And rather than feeling like, okay, we've got the one white character, the one female character, the one whatever,
checking boxes.
It actually feels organic.
Yeah.
And not put upon. Yeah, it doesn't age well in terms of special effects or details.
No.
But it has some fun moments. And I love when the characters are fucking with Wendell Price's character, Agent Dick Gill.
Oh,
just the shit that they do to him.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible.
They kill him. not literally, folks. Not literally. They are competing to see who can screw with him the most. And they change his actual legal status to dead.
Yep, that's great. That is amazing.
Oh, it's so messed up, but it's so great. So I'm sorry to have wasted your time, but I'm also not sorry at all.
I figured that.
Because, you know, now you'll understand when I scream, hack the planet! You'll know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I suffer for your art, sir.
Don't we all, really?
Don't we all? And you got anything else before you wrap this up?
No, not that I can think of. I think by the time that this drops will be right before Fandom happens, the 24-hour streaming event that DC is putting on. So it's I'm not sure I can put in for all 24 hours, but I don't know about you. I'm kind of excited about it. It sounds like we're going to be getting some first look footage and potentially some information on the Suicide Squad. And I'm curious about what James Gunn is going to do with that, particularly because of the people that he's working with in that. Yeah. It actually seems like it's going to be fun. And we know, not just with Guardians, but especially because of Guardians of the Galaxy, we know Gunn can work with an ensemble and actually use them well. So I'm curious about that, seeing if maybe we'll get any news or tidbits about what's going to happen with Wonder Woman. Because if WB is doing this sort of slow alternative release with Tenet, and Disney is putting out Mulan on premium VOD, maybe we'll actually get some home release iterations of some of these other 2020 films. Maybe we'll get to watch them from home. I know you're not all that excited about it. There's a few that I'd like to see, though not necessarily at home. But it'll be nice to actually get the studios some money so that they can keep making movies when we get out of this. That's the one thing, is that the studios have to find a way to make money. Otherwise, they shut down or they run into trouble. We got bigger problems in the entertainment industry. So what about you? How are you feeling about Fandom or anything else?
I'll check it out when it gets here. My excitement level is about 2 right now.
Out of 2? Out of 3?
Yeah,
out of 3?
2 out of about 45 is what my excitement level is. I feel like eventually what's going to happen is no one's going to give a fuck about Comic-Con anymore, and everyone's just going to host their own little thing now. We see it with Fandom. I mean, that's pretty much what Feige did with all of Phase 3 MCU reveal, was his own little ceremony. So it seems like people are SnyderCon, whatever you want to call that. All that stuff would have happened, or JusticeCon. All that would have happened at Comic-Con. So I feel like they're going their own routes now, so we won't get the special treasured feelings out of Comic-Con anymore. But, you know, it'll be what it is. I'm pretty sure we'll get some comic stuff coming out of there too. But DC isn't doing anything really exciting that I know about right now. So, you know, it is what it is. Really, I'm just here for Twitter to see what kind of nonsense people are talking about for the Snyder Cut. That's what I'm here for.
Gotcha.
That's excitement level 46 out of 45. It's going to be a wild time on film Twitter and comics Twitter, and I can't wait for that shit.
I imagine it's going to be wild on both, depending on what they drop. Although I will say, at least as it relates to San Diego Comic-Con, that did start off as comics based, and TV and film sort of work their way in. I understand it's the same thing with Dragon Con. So maybe it'll actually chill things out a little bit and make them a little easier to go to. Sort of like with Heroes Con, they did have some TV and movie stuff for a little while, but more than anything else, it's more focused on comics these days, which makes it pretty interesting to go to. So if everybody's starting to do their own thing, maybe it'll just make it more comics focused again. That might be nice.
Yeah, might be. I guess we'll have to see.
We will see. We will see, sir.
All right, calm down.
We will see.
That'll do it for this episode.
on that contentious note, we will see.
37 of the Cinnamon, and we'll be back with a guest, I do believe.
Yep, that's the rumor.
That's the rumor to talk a little bit about what might spawn out of the events of DC fandom. More on that as it develops, but we'll get there when we get there. You guys take it easy, and we will see you next time around.
Thanks so much. Bye.